Look, I hate to be critical this late in the season, and I know it's a drag, but I've got to be honest with you. I think the main problem with the season 1 finale of Andor is that we will not be getting any more episodes of season 1 of Andor. And I have serious problems with this. And unfortunately, no one can help me get over it. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. And folks, wow, this season finale was absolutely fantastic. They completely stuck the landing, and it has been a blast doing these interviews with our guest, creator, showrunner, screenwriter, Tony Gilroy, about season 1 of Andor. And today we are in catch-up mode, going right to the end. We are talking about episodes 10 through 12. So that's how we're doing it. And, you know, as usual, Tony Gilroy does not disappoint. Tony was very forthcoming about his creative process and what it took to get this season finale in the can. So I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, folks, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We've lasted a decade. That's right. This is our 10th year in existence of Backstory Magazine. And if you have never read us before, you could read our free issue over at backstory.net on a desktop or laptop, or via our iPad app entitled Backstory. If you've never read us before, I hope you check out the free issue. And once you do, I think you'll like what you see. So to sweeten the deal, if you want to become a subscriber, you could use code SAVE5 over at backstory.net. That's save and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription. And folks, the timing is perfect because our Black Panther Wakanda Forever issue, it's coming out any day now because the spoiler embargo has lifted. So we could finally talk with the filmmakers about some of the most memorable scenes in the movie and what it went into. So take a look on our website for that. You could see the entire table of contents there as well. And look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page consider becoming subscribers and supporting independent film journalism. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with creator, showrunner, and writer Tony Gilroy about Andor season 1, episodes 10 through 12. Tony, how you doing?
Pretty well.
So we have a lot of ground to cover. We're going to hit episodes 10, 11, and 12. But, you know, I want to go back a little. So as we talk about the prison storyline a little, because that's kind of wrapping up in these, it had a really ironic beat. And it's sadly from our own world. Everybody's looking for Cassian after the Aldhani heist. Luthen is worried he's going to get caught and spill the beans. So that's kind of the driving factors. But before anyone could catch him, he gets sucked into a small protest that he wasn't a part of. He's arrested for disturbing the peace, even though he didn't do anything. And then he's sentenced to 6 years of slave labor. And unfortunately, this happens here on Earth sometimes too. For all the ways he could have gotten busted, that was definitely the least expected. And I forgot to ask about it last time. What was some of the math around arriving at that, this kind of accidental but completely dystopian messed up way for Cassian to be taken in?
Well, the ability to have his life, his odyssey, his path coincide legitimately without some sort of really cheesy manipulation or anything like that. But the opportunity to have him be kind of like Zelig in a way, not like a shapeshifter, but like a present at certain events. I mean, he's only sentenced to 6 years because of Aldhani. So he kind of makes his own sentence in an odd way. He suffers by something that he did. And when he's in the prison, he's building something. He'll never know what it is, but he's building the thing that's going to kill him.
And that's totally fascinating. And we'll talk about that.
So there may be other things along the way where without pixie dust or anything magical or ordinary, he happens to have some element of destiny to his path. Over-authoritarianism is one of the benchmarks of the last 6,000 years of human history, man. People have been executed for shoplifting for a long time. People are burned for being witches, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. So the idea of shopping while hungover arrest, I mean, that feels contemporary, but it's also deeply historical, and it's surprising, and it gets us where we need to go.
Yeah, I was just curious if there were other ideas that you played with.
No.
Okay.
Plus, also, we really wanted to introduce the KX unit early so that people knew what they were. And then we also wanted to tease with the audience where they thought, oh, my God, this is K2 who's coming in. And part of that was we don't want to save all of that for later on. So we wanted to put something in there. So that was always a placeholder as a K2
moment. And that was great. Well, so in episode 10, Kino Loy, Andy Serkis, he's the head of Andor's prison floor. He finally, he's basically agreeing in that, 9-10 ending beginning to revolt because they get the reveal from the doctor that 2 work shifts were fried because basically they figured out that a guy on level 4 was released to level 2 when he thought he was going home and had served his sentence. And everybody realized that no one's getting out of there alive. So that is a cool idea, as we've talked about in the past. But when the revolt actually happens in the prison, it's a quick idea to spread. How difficult was that for you to kind of gauge the momentum of it? Because obviously they're not going to keep retelling the story. And by the time that they get floor to floor and get other people involved that they haven't, commiserated with yet, because everybody's in their own different sections, it's really about the momentum that keeps going during that prison break. And I'm just curious about writing it because it starts very slow, with making sure that the water is on the floor to short it out. And then it just keeps going faster and faster and faster, which is the way to do it. I'm just curious what the challenges were for getting people to join them in particular.
Dozens and dozens of drafts and rebuilding and,
What were some of the left turns that people could learn from? Some of the things that you kind of tried along the way, but you realized, we got to refine that, or that's too much information. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
We built the prison in the room and Bo did those episodes and we beat them out in a Shaggy form, in a probably different form, but essentially, it was the prison and the escape was there and Kino was there and the dynamics of it were there. How long he was there for, and how you would get out of there, and how the prison was constructed that would allow that to happen, or the ideas of the weakness there. It was a whole bunch of. We weren't all the way there, but we had a good block of it, and then Bo worked the way I work, the way everybody works with Luke Hull. So they went off and sidebarred about the factory floor. And there was a lot of deep work and sketching, and they did a lot of that. They built a lot of that factory floor. And Bo left us in really good shape. We had the factory floor, we had the shape, we had Kino and all this stuff. But there was a tremendous amount of work left to do to try to condense the time down. I don't think when Bo left, there was no communication in the prison. So the hand gesture thing, when I saw the tubes, when Luke showed me the tubes and we realized the thing, I was like, oh my God, the one thing we're really suffering from here is nobody can talk to each other.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? So I think that was a breakthrough. And that's a breakthrough that comes along the way. And then it comes also from seeing the concept art and then building out from there and going, oh my God. And, and then you have to, an inside baseball thing, you have to, as a writer, you have to figure out how you can sell that idea. So probably one of the first things I did in rewriting it was, I probably can guarantee that I probably wrote the scene. There's a really hot scene where they turn off the lights and they're talking and saying, oh my, they fried somebody on and down on the lower floor. And Andy Serkis just blows up at them and says, how can you fucking know what happened down on the thing? And he gives his whole speech. So I probably wrote that speech. And that for me is how I plot. Like, oh my God, look. So he's answering all the questions. He's telling the audience how difficult and impossible and how random it is and how whatever, but he's also explaining the process. So I probably had that. And then condensing the time and coming up with the idea of the new man coming down.
Yeah.
And I was like, how the fuck are we going to get here? But we had a different way of getting down there. Involved boots. We were obsessed with the freaking rubber boots for months. They got to get rubber boots. How many boots? And guys are throwing the rubber boots down. And then the final push is it's just no fun at all. It's just a really lot of ridiculous engineering hard work where you're just looking at the platform and the platform should be here and it should be higher. And what happens? Could you stop it? And can we have it when he leans on? It's literally that elevator that takes the new men in and out is the whole escape. And I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many meetings and how much time we put into that.
It totally works. And, you were speaking a second ago about the boots. I'm sitting there watching them run past all the boots hanging on the wall and nobody took them down. Like you would think that somebody would grab some boots along the way just in case they encounter some trouble. Was there ever, a draft where somebody was at least putting on some boots?
Oh man, in the beginning, it was the logical thing to do. Oh God, the boots are the answer. So how many boots are up there? And if someone could get up there and throw boots down, then you'd have some boots. And if you got some boots, you get more boots. And that was a primary idea that ran out of gas. And then also, the other big idea is that's a late idea is that, oh, you know what? The prison it is understaffed. They don't need staff. That's what's so beauty of this design. You don't need anybody. You don't need to listen to anybody or monitor anybody. You see where they are on the floor all the time. You can watch them on a grid. They're not going anywhere. The fact that a prison like that could be so minimally occupied, and that Cassian, that on his way in, he'd be able to figure that out. And, building the way out, there are a couple ways to get out, and none of them were realistic to involved with production, and the only way you can do it is when you get in there on the set.
What was a discarded way?
I can't even remember all the things that we had to do. Somebody like climbing up to the scaffolding and going over a thing, and we'll do this and we'll do that. If we could just get one pair of boots, and how many times do guards come on the floor? Man, you're making me go back to a very painful.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to give you trauma.
That was that was last spring, desperately trying to finish these things and get them right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to give you trauma, and it's funny.
No, it really is trauma.
It's funny that you say this, because you must have been so traumatized by it, because you arrived at a zero boots situation to the point that
I think maybe that's what it is. I just don't touch boots, man. No.
Yeah, literally they are running barefoot once they finally scale the cliff and get on land.
Well, Burnock says to him down below, he goes, nothing that moves can fry you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the elevator can't fry you. Well, it does make sense. We do have a logic to it. It is all.
Oh, no, it totally makes sense. It's just funny you went so against the boots. Well, so
we went against the boots. Just think of what a fucking dragon is. You're trying to break out of prison. Oh, I got to put on ski boots now. You're trying to put on ski boots?
Exactly. Well, so Kino makes a speech. He establishes that there's 5,000 prisoners. We see him escape. There's no way out but into the water. By the end of the episode, when did you arrive at the idea that Kino can't swim and he's going to get stuck there?
You want to give some closure to it, and you also want to amp his heroism. I mean, he knows all day long that he can't swim.
It's fascinating because by the end of the episode, now I want to hear some of your variants here. By the end of the episode, these 5,000 prisoners are basically just boiled down to Melshi and Cassian. And
you don't know. I don't know that. He says, how many of us do you think got away? He goes, not enough. I don't know. Might well run into somebody else who was in the prison at some point. I don't know. But
that's the question, because when they said 5,000, I thought you were kind of starting to form what might have been part of a ragtag army, and there was going to be a large group that escaped. And I thought it was fascinating that you actually boiled it down to just, from our point of view, of course, as you just said, the two of them. Did you ever have any plans on having a larger group make it out that would start becoming, a part of this growing rebel force? Or was it always just the two of them?
We kind of thought, as depopulated and understaffed as Narkina 5 may be, there must be a prison authority there, and the Empire has a lot of manpower. I would imagine a prison break like that would draw a lot of attention pretty quick, and it's a pretty unforgiving landscape that they're in, and it's about 2 miles to shore, so we didn't want to make life unfeasible for ourselves, and we didn't want to really deal with it. And the two people that we were interested, the idea that they're all swimming away in different directions, just sort of like, whatever that sort of mandala that's up there of all the people dispersing, and they're all heading in different directions. So who knows who got away? I don't know.
Aside from loving watching Star Wars content and talking about it afterwards is basically one of my favorite things to do as well. And there was some debate, especially among some of my writer friends. They haven't seen the finale yet. I have. But when you look back at your arc of these 12 episodes, in your mind, what does the prison represent? Because the question is, by the end of it all, with the two of them getting out there, of course, it gives a sour look at the Empire and the way that they treat people and the concept of slave labor. But you could also say that some of that was also established on Ferrix. So what in your mind was the purpose structurally, thematically for Cassian to go through this experience?
Well, Cassian doesn't know what's happening on Ferrix. He doesn't know. Cassian's return trip to Ferrix after Aldhani is literally like the day after, 2 days after. It's very fresh. And then he's not there. He disappears. So he doesn't know what's happening there. The prison is crucial because it's a little world unto itself. And it's kind of like he goes into the kitchen and makes his first meal, his first revolutionary meal. It's the first example of leadership that he's had. He said to them before, I'll fly the Roanoke trawler because I know how and you don't. This guy's left-handed. He should be on this side. He makes suggestions because he wants to stay alive, but he hasn't done anything in a leadership.
Wouldn't Aldhani kind of be his first like trial by fire in the kitchen?
He's not in charge. He's just there as a mercenary to get in, get out, get paid. Man, I just want to get in, get out, paid. If I help you out, I'm only helping you out because I want to get out of this. He doesn't have any allegiance to that. He never signs on to the cause there at all.
Yeah.
When he gets to prison, well, he's hoisted by his own petard there, and he's in there. And I mean, just try to imagine, they always play the game. You go to a jail and you visit on location. They close the door behind you. Well, imagine being in Aldhani, 6 years, that's it, every freaking day, with a capricious horizon line to get out of there. I mean, it's almost like having locked-in syndrome. It's almost like being paralyzed from the neck down and realize, I mean, it's really one of these suffocating moments. And so what do? Instead of folding, or instead of being, stealing from other prisoners to get better food, or instead of doing anything else, he starts planning how to get out. And it requires a communal. You can't get out alone.
Yeah.
It's going to take other people. Can't be a mercenary. And not only can't get out alone, when it comes time to be a leader, I'm not the best. As a leader, I realize I'm not the best leader. You're a better spokesman. So you give the speech. I mean, he's really, it's a master. It's his master's degree in revolution there. And then what's happening on Ferrix is, when he arrives back there, what's happening on Ferrix is everything that's happening inside him at the same time. It's just the sort of warmer version of it.
I'm curious. We see Melshi and Cassian make it off, of course. Did you ever write anything about other people making it off, or other people with them, or was it always just the two of them?
No, I just concentrated on that. No.
Okay. The prison break in itself as a movement was fantastic, and so was its resolution. But for me, the ending with Luthen and Lonnie was really just a series high. And, Lonnie's an undercover rebel spy in the ISB, and Luthen gives, in my opinion, the shortest and best speech of the entire season. Lonnie says he wants to quit. It's too dangerous. He wants to spend time with his family. Luthen goes on this perfectly written speech, where he's saying things like, I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I have burned my decency for someone else's future. I burned my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Talk about that speech, because it was the perfect length. It comes at the perfect time. It shows the intellectual pressure, like the anxiety, rather than just the physical pressure that we've seen so much in the prison. And it reminds us, of the Cold War thriller aspect that you've embedded into this show. And anything about that speech, because I got to tell you, the minute the episode was over, I went back and rewatched it at least twice, because it was just so well written and gripping.
Very proud to have it in the show. Very, very proud. It's very proud of it. A lot of back and forth with Stellan. Stellan said to me in the very beginning, because I didn't have his big question for me in the beginning, because he's provocative he wants to know what's going on. And that speech wasn't in there. We didn't have it for a long time. Why am I here? What is it? And I had a wacky, crazy, ornate backstory at one point. I just remembering it right now. Very ornate, crazy backstory that I thought was really compelling. And I thought, we'll do this in a later episode, and we'll put this in.
What was it?
I'm not going to get into what it is.
Okay.
And I remember talking with Stellan about it, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't, everybody's in this thing for revenge or this. I want you to dig harder on that. And we will go much farther going forward with some of that. But there's a lot of fancy turns of phrase, and it's very elegantly spoken. And Stellan does a really great job on it. But there's a couple of things buried in there that are, I think, maybe for Stellan were things to hang on to. I mean, he does talk about his ego. I think it's kind of fascinating if you read about revolutions and you read about the people who lead them, and why they so often go wrong is because the people that are charismatic enough and potent enough and forward enough to lead a movement or to inspire a movement or to make a speech like that and keep somebody involved, they can't do that without really wanting to be heard and without wanting an audience and without some level of vanity about it. And it's the leaders who become unaware of their vanity that, how many great revolutionary leaders turned out to be the worst people in history 20 minutes later, right?
Yeah.
Pick them. I mean, just go through the 20th century.
Absolutely.
It's a long list of them, man. It didn't take very long. I mean, Stalin was a cool dude at one point. There was probably a moment if you met Mao in the Houghton's, you'd probably go, wow, you're really like, this is cool, But they just all fuck up. They all drink their own thing. I'm proud that in that speech, he's, besides all the other things and all the sacrifice, he's acknowledging that his eagerness to fight and his ego have been co-conspirators in the predicament that he finds himself in. I find that the extra note of the chord that's most interesting to me.
Yeah, and that he's damned, and it's
Oh yeah.
You just talked about like, charismatic leaders, but actually the other hat trick that you're pulling here is that he's staying faceless. It's important to him to keep his name out of it at this point, and he's succeeding.
Oh yeah, no, and that's going to be a huge.
And so
but he can't turn it on. He's a great human resources guy. He's a great recruiter. He has a whole bunch of different colors to hit with everybody. He does what he needs to do. He spanks Val back in Aldhani. He says, "You take him, or we're going to cancel the whole freaking thing." He does this thing with Lonnie. He has his temperature and tone that he has with Mon Mothma. He has his whole other game of, you and I are the smartest guys in the room when he plays with Saw Gerrera. He has a lot of game.
He does, and that's really impressive to pull it off, though, because he's doing it facelessly. Like, all the pieces are coming together. As you just said, many of these revolutionaries had such an ego. They wanted the credit. They wanted to be seen as the face of the movement, not this guy, which was cool. Speaking of Saw, I want to get into that for a second. Sacrifice becomes an important part of Star Wars. And here we're talking about Kreegyr and Anto Kreegyr and his team, who've been found out by the Empire. Luthen knows about it. He knows that they have to let them fail, be killed or taken prisoner, because otherwise the ISB would realize that they have a mole, which is Lonnie, and it would ruin years of hard work. And so when Luthen is talking to Saw about this, and to get him to come on board and realize the importance of it, it was another great scene between them. And I'm curious about the challenges there, because the way that you do the math on that scene was, rather than give him a big, long, moving speech of an appeal, he basically threatens Saw. He does this slick move to get a gun to his face so he'll listen to him. And rather than try and force him to do it, he's telling him that it's his decision.
But his first thing is legit. I mean,
it's great.
Saw is a volatile, impulsive character. He's super wise and super smart, and he's a gas to write for him. We have some really cool things. I love writing for him, and and Bo has a really cool thing coming up for him. But Luthen's on his ass in that scene when he says that, and Luthen says to him, I think that he tries first. He goes, "Look, I don't know what I'm going to do. Now it's up to you. I didn't want to put you in the position, but now you don't want to know something." Now it's your call, because what you're going to do is not because I'm putting it on you, but circumstances, and because you've raised it now, and now you know what's going on. Now it's your call. That just lights the crack pipe for Saw there. He's super paranoid, man. He does, that just trips him over the edge. But Luthen has to drag him back off the side road and go, dude, pay attention here. And so that's what he does at the end. But but Luthen's really, I'm really interested in Luthen being tipped over. You see me do it. We're tipping him over a lot. He's tipped over in the top of that scene. He's on his ass. What the fuck do I do?
It was a great scene, and again, you came at it from a really different approach that just worked.
It's so nice to write scenes between people that have professional courtesy. The two top lawyers, the two fastest guns in the world.
It's a trope of honor amongst thieves, right? You're showing,
but they can talk in a way. You can have a certain kind of conversation with someone who does exactly what you do in a way that you can't with somebody else.
Yeah. Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We have turned 10 this year. That's right. We've lasted a decade, and we couldn't have done it without you. If you've never read us before, I hope you check out the free issue over at backstory.net or via our iPad app Backstory. And if you like what you see, I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. And to sweeten the deal, I'm offering you coupon code SAVE5. That's save and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. And now is the perfect time to subscribe, because we are just releasing issue 48, our Black Panther Wakanda Forever issue, and it is filled with spoilers. That's right. We had to wait for the spoiler embargo to lift, and it has lifted. And so now that issue is going live any minute now. So check back. You could look through our table of contents, see what's inside, and look. It would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where you could see these Zoomcasts. It would mean a lot to me to have you become a subscriber and support independent journalism. So thanks for considering. But now let's jump right back into our conversation with creator, writer, and showrunner Tony Gilroy about Andor Season 1, Episodes 10 through 12. So look, not to spend too much time on this because I know that there's very little you could say, but when Luthen's being searched in the cave, a little stick, a wooden stick is being taken away from him. Is it a baton? What is it? The minute I saw it, I noticed that it certainly looks like the hilt of a lightsaber. Is it an encasement for a lightsaber? That calls into question, is Luthen possibly a Jedi? Or is this just one of the many trinkets that he's bought and sold? I know that you're not going to answer it, so I'll put it to you like this. You definitely put it in there knowing that fans would talk about it. At what point in your writing process do you realize you could kind of play with the material like that and ask a question that you are specifically not going to answer in this season? Is it icing on the cake is really what I'm asking.
It's not on my, the Fondor, I'm deeply involved in all the weaponry and the sophistication of the Fondor, everything that it does. We built all that stuff up. The gallery, his secret life, the fractal radio, the slap charges, his comm systems, his change of wardrobe, all of those things. I'm right up in every single thing of that to a granular level. He needs to have a fucking staff. He needs to have a weapon. So I go to the props department and we pick one. I don't want to shut down any avenues, but you have to ask yourself, what do you think I'm interested in? So
okay.
Most people in the galaxy have ever seen a lightsaber, know what it is. I don't think anybody, I think most of the beings in the galaxy don't know what the Force is. It's not that was one of the early conversations that we had with Lucasfilm. And when you ask that demographic question, it's astonishing. Most people have never, all the amount of time that's been spent in the other films, fantastic as they're dealing with that subject, but it is not a widely known concept.
Fair enough. It's always great to see some starfighting in a Star Wars film. The daring escape from Aldhani was awesome. But for Luthen to essentially be pulled over by an Imperial and to be sucked in their tractor beam, one of the first things that we saw in episode 4.
Speed trap. He got caught in a speed trap.
Yeah, like essentially pulled over, and asked for his ID. And I just didn't expect it to go into another battle in space. And the way that you did it was so smart, because you're using projectiles to dismantle the tractor beam, which was just brilliant. And then a space battle ensues. At what point did you realize you were going to do that in episode 11 rather than maybe something in your finale of episode 12? Just that is the first part of my question. Because I could easily see Luthen and Cassie.
You don't want to show, you put it in the finale of the show, that's kind of what your show's about then. You're sort of saying this is what we really, it puts down a marker. It's not a gratuitous scene, but it was great. You could cut it out and not have it, I suppose. It doesn't move the story along in some fundamental way. Part of it's practical. We spent all this time developing the Fondor Hallcraft and all this cool shit about it, and the fact that it's like, a sleeper car and it does all these things and nobody knows what it is. And like, it does all kinds of shit that we know how it does. And Mo and Leo and TJ Falls from the VFX department and Luke and myself, and then all the people who build the ships and design them. There's a lot of work went into it. We're like, holy shit, we haven't really used it.
It was a great surprise seeing it happen in 11 like that. And it was
want to be played. And it didn't fit anywhere else. It was like, we could put it here. It's the kind of thing that people were willing to spend a little bit extra money on. It's also fun to do that because I'll sketch it out. Here's the dynamics of the traffic stop, and this is what we'll do, and kind of whatever. It's very contained. And then those guys go off. Moen goes off and TJ, and they build it. And we go back to a visual effects review, and they show us a previs of it. And we're like, oh, wow, this is going to be freaking great. And we can't afford this. We can't afford that. We can do this and do this and do this. They just keep bringing it like Christmas. Everything that's happening outside, they built. And then the editorial. John Gilroy certainly has a lot of experience from cutting space battles from Rogue. So he knows how to do it with those guys. So it's almost like a sidebar. The dialogue and everything inside with Luthen at the dashboard is stuff that we're in charge of. But when it comes to the rest of it, it's kind of like, they bring it back and show us what they have. And
you guys were working in concert because the tension's built of how is he going to get loose. We've never, we haven't really seen somebody that successfully get loose from a tractor beam before. Somebody needs to turn it off inside the ship. So here using just projectiles was a great way to do it.
I know, marbles. Can we have marbles go back and break up the... Yes, of course we can.
I got to ask, obviously the end of the battle, he's basically having these power beams come out from the side of his ship on either side, like almost like Darth Maul's lightsaber. And we've seen maybe once a Republic gunship in Attack of the Clones had some power beams come on the outside of it. When did that idea come from?
That's from VFX. You'd have to ask Moen and TJ have in mind. Other than the two obscure things you've mentioned, we have not laid any breadcrumbs towards Jedi, I don't think. I don't know. But
Well, I mean, because some people are already debating, are those powered by kyber crystals?
Because it's red, just because it's red.
Well, and are they powered by kyber crystals, which power lightsabers?
I don't know the answer to this question, Jeff. It's cool looking, isn't it?
It's cool looking, and the most important thing is the screenwriting mental gymnastics are there, because it's not just another dumb, boring space battle. It has tension leading up to it. He outsmarts them, not even with his piloting, just with some of the tech to get rid of the tractor beam in the beginning, and then his piloting. It was great. No. You know
what? I'm gonna say something. Dan Gilroy wrote one of the best drive pullover scenes ever that I ever had and we ever saw. It was in Bourne Legacy, and we had to cut it out of the movie. And was Sterling K. Brown before he was Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown pulled over Jeremy Renner on the drive back from Chicago to when he was going to meet Rachel Weisz. And it is, oh my God, it's just this amazing scene. It's fantastic. I won't get into that, but it was so great. And we had to cut it out of the movie. It does have some small parallels to this. So I don't know. I guess we've always been waiting to do a speed trap scene.
That's awesome. Well, look, I want to get into the finale, and I'm curious as we get into it, what were some of the important elements for you to accomplish? Because, there's the official riot revolt on Ferrix. We get Bix being saved. We have a capper with Cassian and Luthen. What were some of your goals for that finale?
Everybody has to get together. Everything has to be resolved. Everybody has to close out. Revenges have to be taken care of. All the characters have to be, you have to take attendance. It's a tall order. They all have to be on there. So we have all those things on the menu. We had the benefit, Nick Britell and I, before we ever started shooting, we made that diegetic piece of music. That was the very first thing that we did before production. That was actually how Nick and I met. We spent a couple of weeks building the funeral music and having it, and then getting it orchestrated and figuring out how we were going to do it. And then we had the piece of music. We had the full thing, all the chapters to it and the whole thing. The very difficult exercise on that, beyond the writing of it, is what Ben Karen and Damian Garcia and then their editor, Jan and Johnny, building mock-ups. Is very difficult to coordinate all the cuts around a piece of music that has to be a certain period length of time. What are we going to do? How are we going to not lose all these people? I think that Johnny and I realized on this show, because we do it in episode 3, we do it in episode 6, we do it here. We spent a lot of time on other films and other projects where we just throw a lot of different balls in the air, a lot of characters and people moving all over the place, and we got to tie them all together. It's kind of a thing that we've just gotten used to doing, and we know how to do it. Not a lot of people do it. Ben and Damian had a cool way of doing it. We had our way, and so they took our idea. You would videotape everything and put the music on and go to the editing room and build very complicated to make sure it all works time-wise.
I mean, it was fantastic because you're right. Everybody's there and you're building up, and it's all building to this tension of the band marching, they meet in the middle, but then you have Marva's speech, and it's just wild that from the grave through as a hologram that she's able to do this incitement. Was there ever a version where she was alive and doing it and leading them into battle, or was it always this way?
I had this. No, because on Rogue, I won't go in deep, but like the whole Mads Mikkelsen hologram was a really interesting thing to do and build. Yeah. The emotional potency of that was really, that was the most emotionally powerful thing in the really, really cool to build and design and do all this stuff. So the power of the power of the hologram for emotion was probably already in my craw. But I had that idea early. Oh man, she could do her own eulogy. What a thing that would be on Ferrix. And what if that was a tradition? What if it was a tradition? And what if she'd been doing that since she was, my God, the first time she saw somebody do this, she was 6 years old. And wow, what a cool speech. And what could that be like? And what would a second line IRA provisional funeral look like in Ferrix? What would that be like?
I mean, it was a great scene. And you also have Cyril and Deidre meeting up.
What a first day.
He stalked her across the galaxy. She doesn't know whether or not to be terrified of him, throw him in jail, or to thank him. She has to remind herself, I guess I should thank you. Was that always part of
her life? He saved her life.
Yeah, I know. Was that always part of the mechanics of this, or did that come at a later stage?
Man, I don't remember when that pulled in, but well, look,
it was a wild moment.
The only person I couldn't get there was Mon Mothma.
Right.
Everybody else I got there. So it's really how do I get everybody there? I mean, you want to talk about fancy screenwriting. The mosque scene when Alex Ferns calls up and talks that if you're going to do inside baseball screenwriting, that's the freaking scene, because that scene is just absolute bullshit. I mean, that's what's so hard about Bourne movies is like, how do you get people in the same room together? How do you get information to people? So when Alex Ferns calls up Cyril's house and he's on the thing, and he's in the smelter, and Ben just did such a great job. And Alex Ferns, they took it so far beyond what I ever thought it would be. It's just your writer's dream when you look at the dailies. You're like, oh my God, look what they did. But let's be honest, that's a hairball of information. How do I get Cyril to know what the hell's going on in Ferrix to get there? How do I do that? And so nobody pays attention to it. They're paying so much attention to Mosk and to Cyril and to Edie standing by, and the fact that they can't quite understand, and the fact that they so badly want to see them be together as characters, and they want him to go. Like, there isn't anybody, even 3 weeks later. I probably shouldn't even say it. No one ever thought of it, but that's fancy writing. Right?
I mean, it was
perfect. No, but I mean, you know what I mean? From an inside,
I got you.
Exposition. How do you bury exposition? And really, in spy movies, the hardest thing in the Bourne movies was getting people to have conversations with each other.
Well, I want to talk about where you put Cassian and Luthen at the end, because that was great. He comes onto a ship before Luthen even makes it there. He tells him, I know you came here to kill me. I'm not going to fight you anymore. And there's just like that great moment. They could have gotten physical with each other. They could have had a longer argument. But again, you boiled it down to the shortest possible route. And he basically surprises everyone, including Luthen. He says, you want to kill me? Kill me. Otherwise, take me in. And I'm just curious some of the math you had to do to arrive there.
He's not living his real life. He's outside of himself. He's in dissonance with himself when we meet him, and he's not home with himself. All this stuff about exile and exile from Kenari and he's exiled from himself. He's not right with himself. That's part of it. I think he's exhausted. I think the audience is exhausted by that point. I don't think the audience has any appetite anymore for any more questions. And I think he really means it. I think his mother's gone, Ferrix is gone. The people that he cared about got away to the best he could do it. And he's been through all this shit. And Luthen's going to keep hunting him, and people are going to keep hunting him, and the Empire's going to keep hunting him. Then they're just going to kill him anyway. So, man, I think he's legit, man. I think he's ready. I think he's ready to roll at that point. I mean, I really do think it. Just put a bullet in my head or make use of me. I really think he's being legit there.
The whole time people had been debating what they were building in the prison. And you have the first end credits, moment of the series, and it was powerful. It was great to see that. I personally thought it was an AT-ST foot, the two-legged version of the AT-AT that you see a lot in Jedi. Because those three things, that looked like one of the feet, and to have it be part of the Death Star that's being built, and that's what Andor was building, which, as you said earlier, is a part of his demise. He's
building the gun that's going to kill him.
When did you arrive on that and doing it as this?
That's just we built that prison all together as we described and thing, whatever. Well, what are they building? We started, let's have them build the Death Star. So again, same kind of comp. We said that, and then Moen and TJ, they were like, can we have that to play with? Yeah, fine, you do it. It's all going to be in you anyway. So they went off, and a couple months later, as we were mixing and stuff, they started coming back with the thing, and we made a couple tiny little tweaks in it, but it's their show. It's like they just bring that back.
It was great. It was a great reveal. Well, what could you tell us about season 2? I mean, obviously no spoilers, but are you guys going to publicly state where it takes place in time? How far forward it is?
It's the next 4 years. We've been really blunt.
So it's the next 4 years compacted into one 12 episode arc. What was your toughest scene? I guess is the way to leave it. What was your toughest part of really sticking your landing for that finale? You spoke about the logistics earlier, so I know that was difficult, but maybe something about the emotional resonance of what you were going for, because it was just such a great finale.
12 was easy.
Really?
12 was easy to figure out in the first stage, and then it became incredibly difficult in a practical, mechanical sense to try to beat everything out with Ben Karen and with Damian and with Johnny and Jan and the crew and the ADs to try to make sure, to try to time all that stuff out so it just feels perfect. That became its own project. But the show itself was relatively, usually you find when you get to the end, if you've done everything and you know where you're going, it kind of, as Dan Gilroy said, you write a script, you probably have this experience, you spend a month writing the first 3 pages, right? Over and over and over again. And you might literally spend an hour writing the last 9 pages, literally on a finished script. I've done that so many times. You're like, oh my God. Oh yeah. Like the sprint to the end when you have everything, when the musket is packed, it's like, so it wasn't so hard. was the toughest thing in the show, or what was the toughest thing about 12? I don't know. The toughest thing in 12 was just the orchestration of it. Orchestration of these crescendos, these multi-cut crescendos versus a piece of music that's you can't alter. So I'm literally playing the music in my office and like, okay, can I get that in here? Can I get that in here? And you literally, it's a lot of drafting table work.
It was all worth it, man. I mean, look, the only disappointing thing is I'm going to have to wait a year to see these new episodes in season 2.
Longer than that.
Longer than that, and longer than a year to talk to you again about them. But as usual, you've been very generous with your time, and I got to say, you really stuck the landing. And,
thank you, man.
And that's no easy
really interesting process. These conversations have just been it's overwhelming and fantastic, and I will miss it when it's gone. But it's really been a cool thing. So it's been great talking to you all the way through and doing it like in a 3-stage rocket.
Look forward to talking to you again because even that last tidbit about how fast you could complete once your brain unlocks, I think happens to a lot of screenwriters. So, you being able to articulate that and let other people know that the great Tony Gilroy can sometimes stall in those first 3 pages with that everybody stalls on.
Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It's like if you have to write a treatment or you have to write a long memo that's really about something important. You spend 90% of the time just trying to figure out what's the organizing principle and the tone of it and the lens of it, and then the whole thing writes itself. But you wasted 3 days doing the first page.
Well, it's inspiring to know that it doesn't just happen to us; it happens to you too.
Just happen.
Thank you so much.
All right, be well.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to creator, writer, and showrunner Tony Gilroy for being such a stand-up guy and coming back and talking to us about these final episodes of Andor Season 1. I absolutely love the show. It kills me that we're going to have to wait so long to see the second season, but I know absence will make the heart grow fonder, and I am ready for it whenever it hits. And folks, I would also love it if you check out Backstory Magazine. We have lasted a decade. It's our 10-year anniversary, and if you've never read us before, I hope you will test drive us by reading the free issue over at backstory.net or via our iPad app, Backstory. And you could read the free issue. It's a full issue. See what we're all about. And if you like us, I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. And if you do, to sweeten the deal, I'm offering you discount coupon code SAVE5. And that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. And now is the perfect time to subscribe because our Black Panther Wakanda Forever issue is dropping any minute since the spoiler embargo has lifted. So now we can discuss some of the most memorable scenes in the movie and get the filmmakers to tell us about what it took to create them. So it would really mean a lot to me to have you, my podcast listeners, and iTunes and Spotify, and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page consider supporting my passion project and supporting independent film journalism by becoming a subscriber. So thanks for considering. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2022. All rights reserved. Folks, if you want to reach out to me, you could always drop me a line at backstoryletters@gmail.com, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. That inbox gets a little full sometimes. You could also find me as Yo Goldsmith on Twitter or Yo Goldsmith on Instagram, or you could also follow Backstory_mag on Twitter and Instagram. And yes, that's the official account of Backstory Magazine, and I'm going to be posting a lot more artwork from it in the near future, so stay tuned for that too. I also have a Facebook fan page, so there are a lot of ways to find me, and I look forward to connecting with you. So look, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.